All right. Welcome to IMX. It's about time. 19 months almost. We're happy you're here and really excited about what we have and are able to offer this year. Not quite the same, but it's going to work out great. Definitely want to thank our exhibitors and sponsors. Please take the time to visit them over the next couple of days. The exhibit halls are open for business tomorrow and Thursday. Today you can preview it, set up appointments, so make the best of the time. Really, compared to an elbow bump behind a mask, it all works out pretty well. And exhibitors spent a lot of time working on this, so hope you visit them and have fun with it. I'm Nelson Spencer Jr., or Spence, many of you. I'm with the Waterways Journal. It's our 7th year producing the Inland Marine Expo. This event is here to provide education, networking, and the latest products and services to the inland and intracoastal waterways. These waterways, including the mighty Mississippi watershed, provide environmental advantages, safety benefits, jobs, and even boost national security. And its economic benefit is huge. Most of you know this, you live it. Another group that knows this well are our farmers, the men and women who help feed the world. But for many others, it is unfortunately out of sight and out of mind. This presentation, centered on our study, sponsored by USDA's Agriculture Marketing Services, helps us demonstrate its value to our country. We have some very special guests lined up. To introduce them and present on the study he helped produce is Ken Erickson, Senior Vice President, Agribusiness by IMX. Thanks, Ken.
Well, thank you, Spence. It's a pleasure to be with you. And like you said, it's a different environment, which we are all in person, but it's really exciting to be together and to be a part of the industry's premier event of bringing all the different participants together at one time, especially at times like this. I'm really excited to be able to have with me today Kyle Lisk from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. He and I will be talking about the study. But before we do so, I want to introduce Secretary R.D. James, who will give us a welcome to IMX and talk about the importance of the waterway system as he sits and where he sits with the Army Corps of Engineers. Secretary James?
Hello, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be here today, for asking me to be here today. I'm very happy to be with you at your annual meeting, and thank you, Spence, for your kind introduction today. First, I'd like to give you a little of my background. I was on the Mississippi River Commission for 37 years. And during that time, of course, I was in the lower Mississippi River mostly, although I was in all the inland waterways of the United States during my tenure on the commission, both flood control and navigation and ecosystem restoration. But I learned a lot during my time on the commission about navigation, from the users, from the local partners, from the shippers, and all concerned. And I understand the benefits that inland navigation provides this great country. And I'm not sure we would be where we are as a great country without our inland navigation systems. It's the cheapest, safest, most environmentally friendly mode of transportation available to us in the United States. And unlike truck and rail, we have a lot of room to expand with our inland navigation. Truck and rail, it would be almost impossible. Can you imagine building new interstate highways or new railroads and being able to secure rights of way and environmental permits in order to do that? I can't imagine that. In 2019, Secretary Sonny Perdue, the Agriculture Secretary, had a study done and released a report on inland navigation and its benefit to agriculture producers in this country. It showed basically how that our inland transportation gives our agricultural producers the competitive advantage over the rest of the world. And if the agricultural producers have a competitive advantage, the rest of America has a competitive advantage. securing food, both here and abroad. It also pointed out that the United States has the world's highest yielding crops per acre. Highest yielding crops in the United States. And let me quote you some figures. I'm sure most of you in your business know these, but inland navigation takes care of 60% of our nation's grain imports, 18% of our domestic freight, shipped at 2/3 the cost of rail and 1/10 the cost of truck. We ship 22% of coal, providing 10% of United States electricity on inland navigation system. We also ship 22% of petroleum and petroleum products on the inland navigation system. You know, while I was on the commission, we studied a booklet that was written by the Stratfor Company. And the name of that booklet was The Inevitable Empire. And according to Stratfor, what made the United States the inevitable empire was not only we having the largest inland navigation system in the world, but it exactly overlaid the largest contiguous agricultural area in the world. Now, not only do we have the largest inland navigation system, we have the largest inland navigation system of the next top 3 countries combined. Oh, I know you hear the Amazon, the Nile, and different large rivers in the world, but they're not navigable. Our rivers mostly are navigable, partly due to Mother Nature and God, but partly due to the work we have done since the 1900s to improve our inland navigation system. You know, they say that global demand for food will increase by 60% by the year 2050. Even if we could grow that food, we could not get it out of this country without inland navigation. And when I was I think a sophomore in college, and I won't tell you what year that was, but when I was a sophomore, I had an economics class, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. We were taught the relativity of guns and butter, and the fact that butter, meaning food, helped keep countries out of international conflict. And you can either use guns and bullets or butter to strive for peace. And I think over our history, we have tried our best to use the butter. It doesn't always work, but a lot of times it does, and a lot of times now it is. Besides that, inland waterways, you know, we have towboat operators and owners and dock hands and all of that, but it creates other jobs in the entire inland waterway system. Our problem at this time is that our navigation system is 100 years or more old. Our locks and dams are 1930s vintage, a few even older than that. Think about if we were still trying to operate with 1930s automobiles, or 1930s planes, or 1930s trains. This country would not put up with that. They would not have that. But yet, we're stuck with inland navigation trying to make it work with 1930s vintage locks and dams. Our outages at our locks and dams have doubled since the year 2000. Our single lock chambers are causing delays and backing up towboats, both upriver and downriver, trying to get through those delays. A single point of failure at a lock and dam, where there's only a single lock, can also cause traffic to close on the entire system. And it's happening. It's happening. And that has a direct effect on all of Americans. Now, you know, and I know that the Corps continues to work those old locks and dams and patch and repair them and keep them going as best as possible from an engineering and maintenance standpoint. But how long will that last? How long will that last? We have got to improve our inland navigation system now. For me to help do that and be successful, I've got to have the right tools. One of those tools is a concept I brought with me to this job, and it's moving dirt. Now, what does that mean, move dirt? Well, it means cutting out the processes, eliminating the ones possible, and get through the design, get to the planning, and get to construction. That is moving dirt in my mind. And since I've been here, I've preached that. I've had discussions with the Corps. I have visited most of the districts around the entire United States and talked to not only the district commanders, but the people that work in those districts about moving dirt. I also have to develop policies and goals to help the Corps continue to move forward. Even though they have the revolutionized civil works plan going, and I will tell you, it's an aggressive plan, and they're trying to do the same thing I'm trying to do. Less cost, faster, and get to moving dirt. To do that, we have to employ innovative tools and eliminate those processes that I mentioned a moment ago. But I am also exploring alternative financing, ways to get more done cheaper and with maybe dollars that don't come exactly straightforward from the federal government. Those of you that are in the Inland Waterway Trust Fund understand what I'm talking about, and that applies to many other areas of our country, many more of our core civil works projects. And another thing is I have demanded that the Corps engage with our partners. And I don't mean tell them what we're doing after the product is finished. I mean collaborate with the partners, let them have input into our processes, our designs, our planning, our EISs, and everything that goes getting to move dirt with a project. The Corps is going to do that, and I think it will be a big help. You know, where I was from in the Mississippi Valley, the lower Mississippi Valley actually, although we incorporate the entire Mississippi Valley on the commission, I was used to dealing with partners. We have a great history there of dealing directly with partners and taking their direct influence on us, and what they say helps them the most. Well, I've discovered that around the United States, that's not always true. And in some instances, it's foreign to a district to do that. So I directed the Corps to do that, and the headquarters accepted that, they agreed with that, and all the districts in this country are beginning to engage and collaborate, not coordinate, collaborate with partners. I've also shifted responsibility from the headquarters and the division headquarters straight down to the districts. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where moving dirt happens, is in the districts. they should better know, particularly if they engage partners, they should better know what needs done and when and how to prioritize that work. We've eliminated bureaucratic layers by doing that have been in our bailiwick for decades. Thanks to the President's direction, we've also are in the process of updating, CEQ is in the process of updating the NEPA process. That's a big deal because the NEPA process, the new one, will not require us to go strictly on the NED benefits of a project. We can now look also at regional benefits, social benefits, environmental benefits. And I'm trying my best to get it where we can look at all benefits for a project. I do not see where it's fair if a benefit is there to be accumulated by a project that we don't use them. You know, a lock or dam or a levee, a dike, those are all considered core projects. I say it myself, core project. That's a core project. Well, it is, but it's not really. It's a core project with the help of many, many people. And I'll go back to those local partners. Those local partners put money into the process. They put guidance into the process. They put local knowledge into the process. And all in all, it makes us, the Corps, come up with a better project. So all we've got to do is engage and collaborate with those local sponsors, those local partners, to do that. And I have directed, again, the Corps to fully cooperate with our partners. One last thought is that navigation and flood control go together. One helps the other. When you work on flood control on a river that's a navigable river, you're also helping navigation. When you work on navigation on a navigable river and the projects that improve navigation, you're also helping flood control. Seldom are these challenges inseparable. Improving Army Civil Works and the Corps of Engineers and the projects that we build is my goal. That's why I'm here. I pledge that commitment to you as I talk to you today. I pledge that commitment to you, my partners. Thank you.
Secretary James, thank you for that great introduction here today, and we certainly appreciate you taking time to be with us and to be able to share your insights. And certainly your experience on the river system is long storied, and certainly with your experience both as a farmer, a developer, and also your many years and tenure sitting on the Mississippi River Commission have been invaluable. And now in your role as Undersecretary for Civil Works at the Army Corps of Engineers certainly has brought some confidence and some reassurance to the work that's going on in the system here. Today, like I mentioned earlier, I'm very pleased to be with Kyle Lisk from the Office of the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm certainly IHS Markit appreciated the opportunity to work with Kyle and his team. Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you. As we go to the next slide, we'll look at real quickly the background of the study that we did, and we'll jump into how we went up the methodology, the framework, and we'll talk about what are some of the implications, and then what's the big takeaway as we come from there. What's at stake as we close out here? And if you've got questions, by all means, feel free to enter those into the chat box here, and we'll hopefully have time to look at those and answer many of those that you have. If not, we'll try to address them at another time with you. Kyle?
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Happy to be here, and let me start off by sending the regrets and regards of Secretary Perdue. He wishes he could be here. This is an issue that is near and dear to his heart, and someone familiar with the issues and the understanding, the importance of the waterways to agriculture. He wishes he could be here, but he's busy with a number of other things, but we're excited to continue to talk about the importance of the waterway system here. And at Secretary Perdue's direction last year, as Ken had mentioned, our Ag Marketing Service program had commissioned this study, and we completed it, and Secretary Perdue, along with Assistant Secretary Artie James, made this study public last August at the Mill Price Lock and Dam facility just north of St. Louis there. And let me also add my thanks to Artie James's leadership. It's extremely nice, and we're very fortunate to have somebody with the experience that Artie James has, not only from his time on the Mississippi River Commission, but also someone who comes from an agricultural background, and he understands it as well, the importance of the waterways to agriculture. And him and Secretary Perdue certainly work well, extremely well together on these issues, and bringing light to the much needed attention of this system. But the study that was done last year really focused in on the Mississippi River system there that you see on the slide, and it focused on the Mississippi primarily because that's where corn and soybeans are centered. You can see the darker green spots there. It's the production agriculture of corn and soybeans. The darker the green, the higher the production. And then those products are dependent on the waterway system for exports. 59% of soybean exports flow through this river system. 57% of corn exports flow through this system. And that's not to say that other river systems are important. You know, the Pacific Northwest, Columbia, Snake River are equally as important with wheat exports. I believe 53% of wheat exports move through that system, but we just want to take one quick focus at the Mississippi River, and I believe we're going to be turning our attention next to the Columbia and Snake River system. But this study focused on the Mississippi. On that previous slide, you saw red dots there, and those red dots indicate locks and dams up and down the Mississippi, and the larger the red dot, the larger the investment needed. Most of those investments are turning locks that are currently 600 feet in length into 1,200 feet in length locks and dams, expanding those locks and dams. And that efficiency gain there would be allowing barges that are towing a full 15 barge tow down the Mississippi and allowing them to go through in one lock and dam system, as opposed to breaking that barge into two and moving it down. So essentially doubling the efficiency there. And then it might be difficult to see, but it also has on the very bottom a little red line on the lower Mississippi there, and that indicates the dredging of the lower Mississippi from 45 feet to 50 feet. And we are very happy and proud that that project recently just got final approvals and is going to be starting construction soon. This study that AMS did along with Ken and his team found that that project alone would add 12 to 13 cents per bushel of basis to the corn farmers up in the upper Midwest. So that is money in the pockets of farmers and adding value by doing nothing more than just making the river system much more efficient. So the next slide will start to show what the study did was essentially, you know, I like to say the study did nothing more than confirm and quantify what we in agriculture already knew, and that was that agriculture is dependent on the waterway system. And America is extremely fortunate where we're the only nation that has as robust of a waterway system that goes as deep into the agricultural heartland as America, as you saw on the previous slide. And so what that slide on the left demonstrates is just a tiered step, essentially showing what is very logical of, first, if we don't have a good waterway system, we're going to have reduced capacity of transportation, and that reduced capacity is going to lead to increased freight costs. And ultimately, that final step there is the loss of global competitiveness. And really, this waterway system is where American farmers have that global competitiveness against our competitors, foreign competitors that we'll see later on in other slides. And then what the study did, the slide on the right there, was essentially looked at three different investment scenarios. The first scenario would be a status quo scenario. That is, what if we just continue to fund the locks and dam systems as we have been? What would happen? The second scenario would be an increased investment scenario. What if we make a substantial investment in these locks and dams, and what would happen 25 years down the road? And then the third and final scenario was a very draconian scenario, and that was a reduced investment scenario. If we took a 1% reduction in the investment in locks and dam system, what would happen? And just as you might expect, the results were exactly as you would expect. If you had the status quo, sort of the same thing, everything sort of stayed flatline. But if you saw the increased investment scenario, you saw increases in employment, you saw increases in GDP, you saw increasing sales, and then under the decreased scenario, you saw the exact opposite, decreases in all of those things. So that's really what that top half of that slide shows. And then the bottom half shows the value. That's where the farmer, for corn and soybean farmers, the different types of values. That top, the green bar there, going to the right, you're seeing increased value to the farmer under the increased investment scenario in the locks and dam system. And then to the left, the bottom left, that red, that's the decreased investment scenario and seeing decreased value to the farmers. So almost $100 billion, I believe, spread there between the decreased investment scenario and increased investment scenario. So, and not shown on this slide, but one of the striking stats to me was that if we assumed under the increased investment scenario, we spent $6.3 billion over 10 years. In 25 years, we would see $72 billion in return in GDP. And the secretary loves that stat because coming from his business background, he looks at that and he says that's an 11-to-1 return on investment. You spend $6.3 billion to get $72 billion. He says that's a no-brainer. I'll make that investment all day long. So that's sort of the gist of the study and the high level. I believe the study is available on our Ag Marketing Service website. You can find it there. And I'll turn it back to you, Ken.
Well, thank you, Kyle. That was terrific. And certainly, IHS Markit appreciated working with you, the Agricultural Marketing Service, Transportation and Marketing team, and preparing this study and working collaboratively with not only USDA, but also the Army Corps of Engineers. And being here at the Henderson River Port, mile 808 on the Ohio River, be able to see transportation in action, and especially on the mighty waterways that we have. It is important, and what these slides here show, this last slide and these two charts, is taking those three different scenarios, if you will, and looking at what does it mean to the U.S. Competitiveness. And if you look at the very far left side, that's looking at for Brazil, and to move soybeans and add up all the transportation costs, what it is to move into Shanghai as an example. And you can see right now, this is back when we did the study, and it would be very similar today, and certainly we know throughout the growing season, export season, you do get price variation, but we looked at overall averages and try to put things together in a weighted manner. And you can see right now the United States has had an advantage by a couple, $3 a metric ton to land into Shanghai. But if we do not make the necessary investment, or we just lag behind the investment that takes place here, we start to see the erosion of our competitiveness. And certainly it gets to be more troubling. And especially if you look at the chart on the right, what you see is that the transportation costs for Brazil are falling at a much faster rate than what we're seeing in the United States. And quite frankly, that gets to be very troubling if we see this trend continue. And without the necessary infrastructure investment, when we think about going to the framework that Kyle outlined, if you have an impediment in the system, you just have less capacity to move the volume that's required. Freight rates go up, basis adjusts, and all of a sudden you're not able to compete in the world. And now you have a self-fulfilling prophecy that you start slowing down your exports because you're just not as competitive. But we know if we make these investments, we start to see that investment come back in real terms, and to start to see a fluid system, we start to see economic activity, we start to see the basis response. We're able to attract more volume to the river system there. And as Kyle said, whether it's on the Mississippi River system, and if we were to look at things similar to the draw area of the Columbia Snake River system, you'd see some similar responses. But it's very important to think about our infrastructure and make those investments. And Kyle, that the Secretary has made many presentations, and it's not just because of this study, because of his business sense, because as a farmer, even as a farmer from Georgia, He knows that the Mississippi River system is very important to the price of grain across the United States, and certainly the world price is set at the U.S. Gulf and starts to back off from there as we look at that. And so certainly the industry welcomes Secretary Perdue's continued and ongoing support of the system out there as we go forward. With that, we'll turn it over. If you think about the response from Secretary Perdue, how is this fitting into the administration's plan? We know it's an election year, but as we look at the needs for the system, there's some questions we have here. What does this mean as we go forward here? How does this get further attraction? What can this industry do to support the Secretary James and Secretary Perdue, especially in this effort?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, investment in infrastructure is vitally important, and that goes all the way to the top of this administration. A few summers ago, President Trump was not far from you, Ken, on the Ohio River and said, we're going to do investments in critical infrastructure, and that includes locks and dams, and I think that's exemplified by the project of that deepening of the lower Mississippi. And that's such a special project, not just because it's going to add that 12 to 13 cents per basis to the corn and soybean farmer, but it is how that project was completed. It was a good effort on the Army Corps' end and good collaboration with the state and local government there in Louisiana. And not only that, but soybean farmers from the upper Midwest knew the importance of this project, and they put in their own money too. So it was a good effort all the way around, and a project we're extremely excited to be seeing coming to completion or starting construction and get that done as soon as possible.
Well, Kyle, I think I've got the better situation. I hear sirens in the background. I've got the river behind me. I'm very fortunate to be out here today. Folks, thank you for listening with us today, participating in the IMX. It's a privilege to be with you. Great job to Spence and the team. And if you will, please stay on. The Campbell Towing Company was going to be next with the panel on repowering their units, and they operate along this stretch of the Ohio River. With that, we thank you for this time, and we turn it back over to the program. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Ken.